Yes, ma'am.
Hello, Nilesh sir. Sir, am I audible?
Ha, Pragnaben. Yes, yes, you are audible. Huh?
Okay, sir. Sir, just wait for 2 minutes. I will give your introduction, then you may start your
No problem, no problem,
presentation.
no problem.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. Welcome, everyone, for our last day of faculty development program on recent trends and development in the field of civil engineering. We welcome our respected expert, Engineer Nilesh Shah sir, on behalf of Tapi Diploma Engineering College, Surat, and the presentation topic is NDT of concrete. Sir is working as a civil and structural consulting engineer, registered valuer, and chartered engineer. Sir has completed his BE from SVR College of Engineering and Technology, Surat, in 1987 at first position in South Gujarat University and honor with 5 gold medals. Sir has completed his MTech in structural engineering from IIT Kanpur, India in 1990 and MSc in real estate valuation from Annamalai University in 2018. He undertakes consulting works for challenging structural design, architectural planning and design, repair and strengthening of buildings, proof checking of structural design, etc. for private, government, semi-government and corporate companies. It covers various type of high-rise and low-rise structures. Sir is few of the valuers registered with IBBI and also registered as a valuer of the Wealth Tax Act. For over 10 years, he is actively involved in the valuation of immovable properties. Under his leadership, the firm Shah Associates has rendered structural design services for many projects. Sir has more than 25 years of experience and executed more than 300 structural design and consulting services. Sir has worked as a team leader for WS Atkins and partners overseas Doha in Qatar. Sir is also having knowledge of structural and drafting software like AutoCAD, STAAD, STRAD, ETAB, SAP, and many more. Sir is also engaged in teaching activity for different technical institutes. Now, I request to all the participants to keep your mic and camera off during the session. If you have any questions, please type into the chat box. Now, without any further ado, I would like to give my warm welcome to Nilesh Shah, sir, and turn over the time to sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pratnaben Jariwala. Let me just share the screen. Can you see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Just let me know if the title slide is visible to you
Yes,
all.
sir.
Or...
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's visible. Perfectly visible.
Thank you very much. And a very warm welcome to all the participants in the webinar. I feel there are around more than 40 participants, and as informed by Pragna Jariwala to me, that most of the participants belongs to the faculty of civil engineering from various engineering college across Gujarat state and outside the state of Gujarat. The topic is absolutely a general topic, non-destructive testing of concrete. I would like to focus on the basics of non-destructive testing of concrete. As such, it is a very wide subject and so many methods are available for testing, so many equipments are available, but I would focus on the basic methods, traditional methods which are being used in practice. Though most of you have been instructed by Pragna Jariwala to keep on mute and not sharing their videos, but I would certainly appreciate if you can share your videos so that I can see you and we can interact very well in that case. Second thing is this, I would prefer this not being a one-way communication. That is what, like, I am just going and discussing and throwing the lectures and words to you, that I would not prefer. At any point of time during the presentation, if you have any query, you can unmute, please unmute yourself and we can interact. I was also informed that I will have to complete by 11:30. I will try my best to finish off the presentation and delivery of a lecture or information by 11:10 or 11:15, so that we can have more time of interaction. So I would definitely prefer that this not be the only one-way communication. I would certainly appreciate if all of you would also interact with me during the course of presentation at any point of time. It is not that only I am having the information on NDT of concrete. Being faculty, you all may also have several other informations on NDT of concrete, and you would also share those information at appropriate point of time when the matter is under discussion. So once again, I welcome you all for this presentation. This is the general outline of presentation that I would like to have. A brief introduction, then there will be some discussion on application of NDT to concrete structures. We will discuss specific objectives of NDT in general. We will discuss several methods of NDT. We will also discuss a very important thing that I am trying to put before you is combination of NDT methods. People have been habituated of using single entity method, but here I would try to discuss combination of entity methods. And of course, then put before you the references on which the presentation has been based upon. Now, usually the construction that we carry out in practice in any field of civil engineering, how do we ensure that the construction is good? Being stalwarts faculty members of your engineering colleges, I am sure that you all are aware that there are basic two parameters which we look forward to in real practice. One is quality of concrete and other is strength of concrete. So the quality of concrete determines the durability of or the lifespan of a building or a structure. And the strength of concrete will determine the load carrying capacity of building or structure. So this is very general phenomena. Whenever a new construction is going on, consultant or inspector or a visitor will go to the site and visually try to find out whether the quality of concrete is good or not based on visual inspection only. Second thing is if there are certain problems, because when a designer designs a building, he will have a specific grade of concrete assigned to his design. For example, the grade of concrete is M25 or M30. So certainly it is a matter of concern for the owner or for the designer or for the contractor or for the authority to ascertain whether the grade of concrete which has been specified on drawings by a designer has been achieved in field in practice or not. So that is what I am talking about, strength of concrete. So these are two very general parameters of that ensures whether your construction is good or not. If the quality of concrete is good, if the strength of concrete is good, I think everybody would easily believe that the construction of concrete is really good. What do we exactly mean by quality? So there are so many things that we look forward to in maintaining a good quality concrete. As you know, it is water cement ratio which greatly determines the quality and strength of concrete. Mixing of various ingredients, that is how do we mix the concrete, what is the proportion of various ingredients in a concrete. Formwork of concrete, whether it has got passages which allows leakage of slurry. Placement of concrete, how concrete is being placed, because sometimes we have seen that concrete is placed without any concern to quality concrete. For maximum height from which the concrete can be poured is limited to 1.2 meter by codes, Indian standard codes. But many places we see that in columns the concrete is done, or in foundations the concrete is done. The concrete is released from a height of more than 1.2 meters, sometimes from a height of 2.5 meter or 3 meter or so. Workmanship of concrete would also ensure a good quality of concrete, which is related to compaction of concrete, flowability of concrete, which is determined by slump test, segregation of concrete, honeycombing of concrete, beading of concrete, and so on. Also, to have a good quality concrete, we would certainly go for testing of various ingredients, that is cement, fine aggregates, coarse aggregates, and water, whether they comply to the requirements or not. So that is pertaining to our concerns for quality of concrete and the parameters which directly affects the quality of concrete. Let us talk about strength of concrete. So what usually we do, we will try to have a cube test and try to have compression results at an interval of 7 days or sometimes 14 days or 21 days or 28 days. So if the cube results for 28 days are complying with the design specifications, then we feel that the concrete is having good strength. So if quality of concrete is good, if strength of concrete is good, then we say that the concrete is good, or the quality of construction or the strength which has been achieved, it is fairly good. Okay. Now see, whatever we have discussed up till now, whatever we have done is only related to fresh concrete. I see that Mr. Suresh Kumar has raised a hand. Do you want to say something here? Please unmute and go on. You want to say something? Or it was just a gesture of having? Okay, fine. So whatever we have discussed right now regarding quality and strength and the parameters which are affecting quality and strength of concrete, supervision and other things, that is pertaining to fresh concrete only. So if you achieve a good quality, if you achieve strength of concrete, that is pertaining to a fresh concrete. Does this mean that concrete will maintain this status forever? Perhaps no. I will show you some of the photographs. These are taken from actual field work that we have done and the testing work that we have done for several buildings. So a fresh concrete could be a very good concrete. Though it has passed through all the scrutiny pertaining to quality, pertaining to strength, it could be a very good concrete. The photographs which I am showing you below pertains to a government building only. And as you all know that for government buildings, several stringent measures are taken as at least when the concreting is done. And they comply with all the requirements specified on the drawings by a consultant. They also have an agency called project management consultants who will monitor the quality of concrete. They have a specific quality assurance plan also, which they have to follow as per tender conditions. This building, when the photographs was taken, perhaps it was around 25 years of age. And at the time of the inception of the building, that is when the building was put to use, all the testing and everything that was done was complying to the quality and strength standard that we had discussed earlier. All the ingredients have been tested very meticulously. Still then, after 25 years, the concrete behaves or becomes like this. These are a few more photographs that I would like to put before you. I'm just scrolling through photographs to indicate to you how the concrete can deteriorate with passage of time. You can see that all cover concrete has been removed or spalling has taken place. Cover is no more because the reinforcement has rusted to a great extent. People have put a small water tank in their own flats. Okay. When we do all those testing that we have listed earlier, with specific emphasis on cube testing or any other testing pertaining to the quality of ingredients or quality of materials or regarding workmanship of concrete, are pertaining to fresh concrete only. It is like कि अगर एक बच्चा होता है तो उस समय वो बिल्कुल सही होता है, लेकिन अगर फादर मदर और सराउंडिंग जो है वो doesn't take care of that child with lot of concerns and doesn't fulfill the needs of that child, तो जैसे जैसे उसका उम्र बढ़ेगा वैसे वैसे वो परफॉर्म अच्छा नहीं कर पाएगा, वो बिगड़ता भी जा सकता है. It is same here for concrete also, because the quality of fresh concrete, the strength of fresh concrete is on one hand is the parameter that over ages we have been using, but then quality of concrete and strength of concrete at the point of interest at with aging of concrete is also a point that is very important for us. Concrete ages with time. So concrete is like human beings, like us. We get older, the concrete will also get older. We get sick, buildings will also get sick. We need periodic checkup. Concrete also needs periodic checkup. We need treatment. Concrete also needs treatment. And as sometimes we are put into ICU on life support system, concrete may also require a life support system as it ages. Now, this is not applicable for all the constructions, but I am saying that based on my experience of last 30 to 35 years, at least 50 or more than 50% of construction, I have seen that after 20 years of age, it will need certain amount of intervention. As far as periodic checkup is concerned, I think you all are very much aware that after 40 years of age, doctors will prescribe to us that you must have your full body checkup done at least once in a year. The authority has also come out with a similar criteria for buildings. You must all be aware about that. Even in NBC also, it should be available. But local authority in Gujarat, yeah, like they have got a rule that all RCC structures, if they are more than 15 years of age, then they need to be inspected by a competent structural engineer at periodic intervals in 3 years, and a report pertaining to that is to be submitted to the authority. There is also a rule for industries that those industries which are covered in Factory Act, they needs a periodic inspection, testing at an interval of every 5 years since inception of the building, and then the report is to be submitted to the factory inspector. So it is not that only we human beings take care of ourselves, but the buildings also needs to be taken care of themselves, but they cannot take their own care. Therefore we have to do all the interventions, and we have to take care, a very good care of them, so that they serve the purpose for which they are designed for a longer period. So
Excuse me,
testing of
sir.
fresh concrete. Yeah, someone
Can
is
I
saying.
disturb you, sir?
Yeah, please. Yes, Mr.
Sir, the photographs which you have shown, what is the age of that building, sir?
I think I informed you that it was around 25 years.
Because voice is not clear, I could not hear that. It is a 24 years. Is it
25
constructed
years.
in the coastal area?
It is constructed in Surat, which is I think around 10 kilometers away from the seashore.
Because I observed, I have seen the similar photographs in Goa. Because the coastal area, their structures are going to deteriorate a little bit early than the structures which are constructed in the non-coastal areas.
Yeah, correct.
Because of the humidity and other problems.
Correct. You are right, actually, that coastal area structures would be affected. Now, one thing I would like to point to before is, Mr. Abdul, that earlier codes, did specify a minimum grade of concrete is M15. And there were not several, exposure conditions well defined, but with the last revision of IS 456, the exposure conditions have been defined, and based on those exposure conditions, now in current area, like for example, if you are constructing a building in coastal area, then you need a minimum grade of M25. So with time, the
in addition to
evolution
that,
of codes also takes place. Perhaps these buildings which I have shown you was constructed with M15 grade of concrete only. So that also plays an important role.
And also cover requirement, anything specifically increase it, sir, in coastal area?
I think that there is not much clarity about the increase in cover for coastal areas. It remains same. But one thing is more important, that it is cover from any reinforcement. That is, for example, if we are providing ties in column, then earlier the cover for column which was specified at 40 mm was from the main reinforcement. But now recent code suggests that it is from any reinforcement, that is from ties also. So if we are having a 10 mm tie in column, then the cover to main reinforcement will be 50 mm.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, okay. So what I wanted to put before you is that testing of fresh concrete is one subject which is extensively dealt with. Quality, strength, and testing of fresh concrete extensively dealt with during the curriculum. But testing of hardened concrete is altogether a different subject. And testing of fresh concrete is just when the building is being constructed, while testing of hardened concrete takes place several times, say every 5 years, when the building is under construction. When the building ages with time, and that is where non-destructive testing comes in picture. There is also partially destructive testing, few methods that we will be discussing here in this presentation. Ideally, testing should be done without damaging the structure, and therefore we call it as a non-destructive testing. But then certain tests are there which precisely give you the condition of the structure, that is quality or strength of the structure, which are partially destructive. So I would also be discussing that method in this presentation. So in general, non-destructive testing is used whether the structure is suitable for its design load and its occupants. To assess range of properties, NDT can be used like density, elastic modulus, strength, surface hardness, reinforcement location, reinforcement diameter, cover to the reinforcement provided, quality of concrete, structural integrity, voids in the concrete, micro cracking in the concrete, delamination. Sometimes to find out the width of crack also, surface crack in concrete also, non-destructive tracing method is used. Sometimes to find out the thickness of the inferior layer of concrete also, NDT is used, which we will quickly discuss. I will put before you the various applications of NDT as far as concrete is concerned. So first is for quality control, for precast concrete also, or for cast in situ concrete also. That is, if a construction is going on, then today there is a lot of awareness amongst people. They usually go for non-destructive testing to ensure whether the quality of concrete is good or not. That is, if a column, beam or slab has been constructed inside, which is just 7 days old or 10 days old, they may call NDT people to perform certain tests like rebound hammer test or ultrasonic pulse velocity test to ensure whether the strength and quality requirements are as per the specifications or not. To find out the acceptability of ready-mix concrete supplied to site, this is very important, and a lot of problems are there as far as ready-mix concrete is brought to site. Ready-mix concrete is really a good thing and it should improve the durability of concrete, but the way ready-mix concrete is being used on site, perhaps the problem lies in there, and therefore it is, sometimes people would refrain from using ready-mix concrete or would refrain from developing a full confidence on ready-mix concrete. It also used for resolving doubts about workmanship involved in mixing, placing, compacting, or curing of concrete. It is used to monitor the development of strength, to decide about formwork removal. This is especially true for post-tension beams or slabs because they would like to ensure certain strength is achieved before the stressing is done or the formwork is removed. It is also used to find out the extent of cracks, voids, honeycombing, and similar defects in concrete to determine the concrete uniformity. It is sometimes used as preamble to core cutting, load testing, or any other major intervention to be carried out in the building. It is also used to find out the position, quantity, and condition of the reinforcement. It is also used to prepare distress swapping areas, to find out the areas where delamination is done, overloading is done, where fatigue is observed, or concrete is exposed to chemical attack. Fire damage assessment or a building which is subjected to explosion or severe environmental effects, like those buildings around coastal areas, if they are deteriorating very fast, then NDT is very useful for these types of assessments. It is also used for durability of concrete to find out sometimes useful remaining life of a building, though there are no standards available. A lot of research is available through which you can estimate the remaining useful life of a building. We may touch upon this topic if time permits. Monitoring long-term changes in concrete properties. Obviously, with time, the concrete properties will change. So you can keep a record of all those things like the deterioration in strength, modulus of elasticity of concrete, the quality of concrete, and so on. It is also used for insurance purpose nowadays. For example, if building is subjected to fire damage and if you wish to put a claim which is say more than 1 crore, 2 crore rupees or 10 crore rupees, then obviously the insurance company would also demand structural condition assessment of the building with non-destructive testing results and their interpretation, and depending on that, the rehabilitation and strengthening estimates. Change of ownership is done, then also you can use NDT to ensure whether the building that we are buying is okay or not. Change in configuration, for example, building expansion, vertical or horizontal expansion is taking place. Change of use, for example, residential building is being converted to industrial building, or a building which is visibly damaged, for repair and retrofitting, the non-destructive testing is also used. Those were the areas where the non-destructive testing can be used. Now, what are the specific objectives for NDT in concrete? The objectives could be to estimate the in situ strength of concrete, to ascertain the quality of concrete, to ascertain the extent and reason of cracks in concrete, to locate the areas of delamination, to judge the thickness of concrete layer, to locate and quantify the amount of embedded steel in concrete, to identify possible areas of corrosion in embedded steel, to find out the depth of carbonation. What is carbonation? I hope you would be knowing about that, else we will touch upon it. Chloride content and sulfate content, whether it is within permissible limits as specified by the code or not. So, whenever NDT is done, it is done with certain objective. And we have listed those objectives in the previous slide, which I have shown you, that NDT is used for those particular purposes. We have discussed about the application areas of NDT, and we have discussed about the various objects, specific objects for which the non-destructive testing is used. Perhaps this is one of the main object, which is to estimate the in situ strength of concrete. As we have already discussed, that fresh concrete has got a strength which is ascertained by cube testing, but then the concrete may not maintain the same strength over a period of time. Second and most important thing which I want to put before you is that cubes are prepared in a very controlled condition. They are cured in a controlled condition for 28 days before testing. The placing conditions and curing conditions of cubes are very much different from the field concrete. For example, cubes are placed in water for 28 days and then they are tested. So it is subjected to a continuous curing for 28 days, which is not so for field curing. For example, the slabs surfaces are cured from the top by water ponding for certain days, but not for all 28 days. Intermittently, it is done. To be very practical, I am telling you the effects that happens on field. Columns and beams are with sprinkling water on that or by putting gunny bags on that. They are cured, but not continuously. Intermittently, this is done, and perhaps not for a period of 28 days. So, the conditions of casting a cube is far away from the casting conditions of actual concrete, in situ concrete. The conditions for curing of cube is far away from the actual field condition in which we provide curing to various structural members. And therefore, the cube strength that we get for a fresh concrete could be far away, far away from the in situ strength of the same concrete, of the same age, right? I think many of you have experienced this in practice also. Therefore, we need to make an effort to estimate the in situ strength of concrete in actual structure, perhaps irrespective of its age. And that is why I told you that many developers in the city of Surat and in Gujarat, they would also rely on non-destructive testing of fresh concrete. That is, once concrete is put, immediately after 7 days or 15 days, they will resort to NDT to ensure whether the strength that is predicted by cube testing are in compliance to the actual in situ strength of concrete or not. So cube strength represents only fresh concrete during casting, but they don't represent the in situ strength of field concrete. Second thing is to ascertain the quality of concrete. So better the quality of concrete, higher is the strength of concrete, but then we have a specific method which is used to ascertain the quality of concrete. Cracks of concrete, this is also one of the objectives. As I told you earlier, we have specific method which we can use sometimes to find out the presence of cracks and to find out the width of crack, depth of crack also, surface cracks also, by using non-destructive testing. The crack takes place due to shrinkage of concrete, creep, corrosion of reinforcing bars, alkali aggregate reaction, excessive loading, deficient design, unequal settlement of soil. With age of concrete, all these things takes place. Delamination of surface concrete areas. The photographs which I have shown you, I think several of the structural members had extensive delamination, that is cover concrete has fallen apart, and concrete is used to find out the structural members where there is a gap between the cover concrete and the core concrete. Now, delamination takes place mainly principally because of the corrosion of reinforcement. The thickness of concrete layer, that also can be found out by non-destructive testing. These are the examples. Like for tunnel lining, it is very difficult to ascertain whether the concrete poured is of thickness as specified in drawings or not. Even for thickness of pavement also, you can use non-destructive testing. Even for suspended slabs also, it is very difficult to ascertain whether if a slab which is specified as 125 millimeter on plan, whether it has got a thickness of 125 mm or not. So NDT helps in ascertaining the thickness of concrete layers also. Obviously, reinforcement detectors are available in field through which you can find out the quantity and quality of reinforcement, including the cover thickness. Methods are available to find out whether the reinforcement which is embedded in concrete is corroded or not. With 90% probability, you can suggest that the embedded reinforcement is corroded, or it is likely to be corroded, or it is not corroded. You can, specific objectives, I have told you earlier, that carbonation, depth of carbonation can be obtained, chloride and sulfate content can also be obtained. So the NDT is like a health check for a building, like what we do every year after the age of 40 years. So it gives you an idea about structural condition of various parts of the buildings or the building as a whole in terms of its quality and strength. So with NDT, what would you like to do? First is we would like to ascertain the quality of concrete. We would like to ascertain the strength of concrete, and we would like to ascertain the durability of concrete. So NDT in principle, though I have shown you several objectives, in principle, specific objectives, in principle, generalized objective of NDT is to ascertain the strength, to ascertain the quality, and to ascertain the durability of concrete. So before we conduct non-destructive testing, we must identify the purpose for which we are doing NDT. Like one should not, client should not just call NDT agency and ask them to do testing for that field. It should have a specific purpose. That is very important. It is like, because see, even if I don't have any health problems right now, I go and if I do my angioplasty or angiography, then I will, the doctor will say that you have got a 60% or 70% blockage, right? But I don't have any health problems. The moment they tell you that you have got a blockage, the subsequent concerns will start and will affect your lifestyle. Similarly, for building also, without a purpose, I don't think we should go for non-destructive testing, because it is always possible that your building is performing very well, irrespective of whether you have knowledge about the compliance to quality and strength aspect and durability aspect of the building. It is performing very well. Visually, everything is fine. And you don't have any other concern regarding the condition of the building, then you should not go for non-destructive testing. You should not go for the quality, strength, and durability parameters of the building, because it may happen that the parameters may not comply with the provisions of the codes, and then you may have to attend to the subsequent events that would take place, right? So it should have a purpose. So there could be general purpose and there could be specific purpose, right? We will talk about this detail. Before we conduct NDT, we must take note of these things. Concrete structures are usually large structures. For example, if I have a building which has got an area of say 1 lakh square meter, okay, or say maybe 1 lakh square feet, taking non-destructive testing results on each and every structural members is practically impossible. Physically also it is not possible, and economically also it is not possible. So we should narrow down to certain specific areas for testing. Those areas could be areas of interest or could be a random choice depending on the purpose of testing. For example, if the purpose of the testing is general, a very generalized testing that I just need to have an idea what is the structural condition of the building, then you can have random sampling. But if you know there are certain areas of interest, for example, a certain slab which is subjected to excessive loading, or certain beams or columns which have shown signs of distresses, then those are certain specific areas of interest. Then we can have a selective non-destructive testing for those areas. Now let us talk about various methods of non-destructive testing in concrete. So these are the traditional methods: rebound hammer, ultrasonic pulse velocity method. Rebound hammer is used for getting an idea about the surface hardness of the concrete. General impression people have is that rebound hammer gives you an idea about strength of concrete, but please be careful. It represents only surface concrete, and there are several other limitations also which I will discuss. The second method is ultrasonic pulse velocity method. It is used to ascertain the quality of concrete. IS code has given 4 categories of quality of concrete, and based on UPV results, you can ascertain which category of quality you are having at your place. Corrosion mapping, which is done by half cell electric potential instrument. Rebar locator, it is also known as cover meter, which is used to find out the embedded reinforcement, the diameter, and its cover. Carbonation test, this is most neglected, a very easy test, but it is very important, which we will discuss. Visual inspection, that is delamination survey or crack mapping. I think we will skip this part when we discuss the several methods in detail due to time constraint. Laboratory testing of concrete, chloride, sulfate, and cement content. Core sampling and testing, and actual load testing. So these are all traditional non-destructive testing methods, which I think we will try to cover in this presentation. These are advanced methods. Some of them are available in metro cities with limited use. But I hope that these methods would be available extensively all over the country, because in other countries, you know, this has been used widely, but they have got limited application and they are very costly. Therefore, they are not practically used in our country to the extent to which it should be, which is infrared thermography, image processing, acoustic emission, ground penetrating radar, radioisotope gauges, impact echo, in situ permeability of concrete, endoscopic examination, Windsor probe, permeability test, resistivity test, moisture content test, and so on. Let us see these traditional methods one by one. So rebound hammer application is done to find out the in situ strength of concrete, to ascertain the quality of cover concrete, relative estimate of strength, and document changes occurring in surface concrete with time. This is the instrument which is used. So principally, as I have told you earlier, that it represents the properties or characteristics of the surface concrete only. So it is principally a surface hardness tester, because based on the hardness of the surface, this interpretation of strength is done. Right? A very simple instrument. So it has got a plunger, spring, and a hammer. And when you press this instrument against the surface of concrete, the hammer is released and a rebound takes place, and the a rebound number is indicated on the which is rebound hammer. All right, you note down that number, and based on that number, you can find the in situ strength of the concrete calibration which are provided by the manufacturer, or calibration curves which are also available in literature. So it is usually done not only at a single point. For example, I have shown you here in this figure that 4x4 grid is prepared, and reading is taken on each and every point of the grid, and readings are noted down. So, depending on the judgment of the agency, readings are taken either at 9 places, sometimes at 6 points at one location. I'm talking about 6 points or 9 points or 16 points, right? And then the averaging is done and offshoots are removed, and then it is the strength conclusion is done. It is desirable to take 10 to 12 readings spread over an area to be tested, right? It is to be conducted as per 13311 part 2 92. This is correlation bound number and a concrete strength. It depends upon the direction of the impact that you are providing. It also depends upon the various conditions of the concrete, like temperature, moisture content, and so on, but their effect is slightly negligible. So the calibration curves are provided with reference to the direction number, rebound hammer, and for a given rebound number for that particular direction, interpretation of strength is done. These are the limitations of the test. It needs a very smooth surface. You will have to prepare that. If the surface is plastered, then you will have to remove the plaster and make surface smooth, on which you can apply the rebound hammer test. Concrete to be tested shall be part of a larger mass. Otherwise, it is to be supported in an unyielding manner. Jerking will result in lower rebound members. So you cannot test members which are having a thickness, very less thickness, for example, 3-inch thickness or 5-inch thickness or 6-inch thickness, right? It should have an unyielding mass. That is impact on hammer. Now, taste is sensitive to local variations in concrete. As I have mentioned to earlier, it depends upon the size of the aggregate used. If the aggregate is there directly below the plunger of the instrument, then you are very likely to get a higher reading, right? It also depends upon the micro or the voids which is there in the concrete. It depends upon the moisture content of the concrete. It also depends upon the age of the concrete. So, rebound hammer will require specific calibration for which anvils are available, right? So all those involved in non-destructive testing by using rebound hammer, they must have anvils available with them. They must do periodic calibration of the rebound hammer on anvils. Second thing is that this test, though it is widely used in practice because it is very cheap. For example, I have seen people doing this test at 50 rupees a point and up to 500 rupees a point. So there is large variation. Even rebound hammers are available from different companies at different prices. It starts from rupees 5,000, a local manufacturer or a Chinese manufacturer, and it ranges up to 4.5 lakh rupees from a standard car, right? But it is extensively used. These are the advantages. That is, it's very fast, cost effective, extensively used. Now, this is general interpretation of quality of concrete. I'm not saying strength, because for strength, you need a lot of reliance on the database that you will generate, and just not based on the data provided by the manufacturer. But this, I think, perhaps is very good. If the rebound number is more than 40, Ten, quality is good. 30 to 40, it is good. If it is more than 40, it is very good. If it is less than 20, it is poor and it gives hollow sound. Then there is a delamination in the concrete. Now, this is a typical format of a test results, which is presented before you, where readings are taken at given location at 12 points, and the impact direction is 0 degree. It could be 90 degree also. It could be 180 degree also, right? And depending on that, the readings are interpreted. Well, this is what usually we do, that we put all the results on a graph and try to find out the percentile strength. For example, this graph has been prepared based on, say, more than 100 readings available, and it gives me an idea that 80% of the results are having strength of 10 kilonewton per meter square or less than that. Now, this has got a correlation with percentile strength, characteristic strength, which is 95 percentile. And here you can see that for M15 grade of concrete, if we have done testing, that you can see that rarely 30% of the results suggest a strength which is more than M15 grade. Now let us talk about second, again a very popular method, which is ultrasonic pulse velocity test, which is for determination of quality of concrete. These are the various applications that we get to find out the quality of concrete.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question, sir?
Yeah, please.
So there are actually 3 questions. I don't know time permits or not. Question number 1: is it possible to use underwater for particularly pile foundations? Can you go for this test? Because pile foundations, we have sometimes the water level will be there on the piles. Below the water table, can you go for testing? Not below the water table, below the water level. Can you go for testing of this?
Below the water level, I think it is very difficult to conduct this test.
Okay, sir. That's I want only answer. I don't want elaboration. I want to clarify that. The second question is, if you take a column, in column, whenever they add a concrete, they add from the top of the foam work. Therefore, the chance of the top quality of the concrete and at the middle portion and the bottom, the concrete maybe will have variation.
It will have variation.
Yeah, therefore, which is the right location to go for column testing, either on the top or middle or bottom, or where we have to go for testing?
Yeah, usually, see, again, there are no standards available for this, or there is not a standard practice available. But usually what we have adopted doing is we try to do the testing at the middle part of the column.
Okay.
Yeah, but there are no guidelines available to this regard. But it is very true, because we have already established this, that the concrete in the bottom portion and the top portion does not have a good quality, neither they have got a good strength. Because at the top portion also, if I talk about UPV readings, then the beam column junction is there, lot of reinforcement congestion is there. So it does not give you good results as far as UPV is concerned, or even for strength also, the same situation is there.
Okay, so the last question is, as we have mentioned that this test is mainly for the concrete, there is no specific answer. Is it for PCC or for RCC? What is the effect of the reinforcement on the test results? For example, you provide 4 rods on the 4 corners, or maybe you provide 6, or maybe you provide 8. Will you get the same strength or different strength?
We are talking about which test? We are talking about rebound hammer or ultrasonic?
Rebound only, sir. I am about rebound only.
See, rebound hammer test, as we have said earlier, we have seen that it is mainly related to characteristics of the cover concrete, right? So the reinforcement will lie behind the cover. So I am not sure about this, but I have a feeling that rebound hammer results should not be affected by reinforcement unless they have got a proper cover. Regarding,
But reality, when you go for testing of the destructive test, we are going to test for the entire concrete, sir.
Yeah. No, that is right. See, rebound hammer test, Abdulji, rebound hammer test, though I have elaborated you here, one thing which I would like to tell you at a later part of the presentation, because I mean time limitation is there, is one of the most faltu tests that I am saying.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Right?
Understood.
So इससे ज्यादा गलत टेस्ट हमने देखा ही नहीं है. और IAS कोड में भी, अपने कोड में भी, it is very clearly written, but it is written in such a way that people don't get that impression. It is written that with relation to the carbonation of concrete or many other parameters, the results of the test could be varying by plus or minus 50%, right?
Okay.
So these tests usually is to be used only for relative evaluation of strength. For example, through rebound hammer, if I have got M15, 15 strength of 15 at one point and strength of 28 other point, right? Then I will say that the strength at point number 2 is 20 by 15% higher than strength as point number 1. But it should never be used for absolute strength evaluation.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now let us get back to UPV. I will really appreciate if people keep on asking questions and interacting with us. Right? It is not that whatever I am saying here is standardized. This is based on my experience. So if you will interact with me, it will also add to my knowledge. So ultrasonic pulse velocity test, I think we need to move a little faster because it is already 11 o'clock and there are a lot of things to be covered, right? Okay, but don't hesitate in asking questions or don't hesitate for interaction. I'm not going into the details about the instrumentation or the principles of the instruments or the methods that we are using. I'll straightway jump to the application part. So what is there in ultrasonic pulse test? This is the instrument which I have shown you. It has got two transducers. One is transmitter, the other is receiver. Basically, ultrasonic pulse is transmitted from transmitter and received on a receiver, right? And the time taken to travel between these two is noted by this instrument. Depending on that, the velocity of ultrasonic pulse is obtained as indicated here. That velocity is equal to length of travel of the pulse wave divided by the time that is recorded by the instrument. So for example, if I am testing UPV, if I am conducting UPV test on a column, it has got a width of say 300 mm, then the length of travel is 300 mm and it is to be divided, it is divided by time that you are recording. Right, and you get a velocity of ultrasonic pulse in say meter per second or kilometer per hour or so. Right, now there are three methods by which the test is conducted. The first one, where the transducers are exactly opposite to each other, that is a transmitter and a receiver. They are exactly opposite to each other. That is known as a direct transmission. There is a method where they are at 90 degrees to each other. So like this, right? So then it is known as semi-direct transmission. And both of them are on the same plane, facing the same plane on the same surface, then it is known as indirect transmission. Now let me tell you here that the only standardized method is direct transmission. In research, you have interpretations available for surface probing, that is indirect transmission, or semi-direct transmission also, but they have not been standardized because still, it has not been confirmed by any code of the country. This is the left figure shows the direct transmission test under progress, and the right figure shows the surface probing, that is indirect transmission. Now, these are the interpretation of the results for direct method, which is taken from our IS code of practice. If the pulse velocity is more than 4.5 kilometer per second, then the concrete quality can be treated as excellent. If it is between 3.5 and 4.5, then quality of concrete is good. It is between 3 and 3.5, then medium, and less than 3, it is doubtful. Now, here also, it is said that doubtful does not mean it is poor. Doubtful means that you need further investigations, right? So whenever we do ultrasonic pulse velocity test and we get a result which is less than 3, sometimes I have seen people say that this is to be rejected. It is not so. It says that it is doubtful. It does not mean it is to be rejected. It does not mean it is poor, but it needs further investigation, say by other tests, you may go for core testing and try to establish the strength of concrete. And when you extract a core, you actually see the quality of concrete by visual inspection, right? So that is direct method. The indirect method, as I told you, these I have taken from the literature, but there are no standardized, it is not available in any code of practice, right? So we should refrain from, it can be used, it should be used, but we should refrain from concluding that the concrete is poor based on the indirect transmission method. Okay, UPV can also be used for determination of dynamic modulus of elasticity, which is as shown in this formula, that dynamic Young's modulus of elasticity can be obtained by using this formula. It uses the ultrasonic pulse velocity reading in kilometer per second that you derived from the testing. It also uses Poisson's ratio. It uses the density of concrete. If this is available to you, then you can find out the dynamic Young's modulus of elasticity, which is 5%, usually higher than the static modulus of elasticity. UPV can also be used to find out the depth of crack that I have indicated to you earlier. This is the formula that you can use. You have to put both the probes on the surface probing is to be done at equal distance from the crack. And if H is the depth of the crack, then it can be obtained as indicated in the formula, where TC is the travel time around the crack and TS is the surface travel time. So you need to take a reading at 2x distance between transducers without crack. That reading is TS, and with crack you take the same reading and get a reading which is equal to TC, and then the depth of crack you can obtain by using this formula. It can also be used to find out the thickness of inferior layer, which I have indicated here in this graph, that the thickness can be obtained by using this formula, where V2 is the velocity after the discontinuity, V1 is the velocity before the discontinuity. So in fact, you have to take several readings with different spacing of transducers and find out where the slope changes. And that wherever the slope is changing, that is the value of X. The velocity is V1 for the first slope, the velocity is V2 for the second slope, right? So spacing versus transit time graph is to be plotted by surface probing, and these values you need to establish as V2, V1 and X, and by inputting those values in this formula you can get the thickness of the inferior layer of concrete. Now these can be used where delamination of concrete is taking place, either in columns or in pavements or in slabs or in breach decks and okay, these are the factors which are influencing the results of the ultrasonic pulse velocity test, which is moisture content, temperature, path length, size and shape of specimen, reinforcing bars, and so on. This is a standard test format in which we are supplying the results for ultrasonic test. You can say in the last column, the interpretation is given. Again, I will emphasize that doubtful does not mean a poor result or does not mean you need to reject. It means that further investigation is required. Half cell potential. I think I will quickly show you. This is the instrument which is used. That is the half cell available with the instrument. The biggest disadvantage of this method is that you have to expose a reinforcing bar of the concrete, right? So people sometimes do say that this is a non-NDT method, but then you need to expose a reinforcement and you need to connect, establish an electrical connection to the reinforcement as shown in this figure. And then you put this copper sulfate electrode at different places and take readings of the potential. And based on that, you interpret. So the main question is that you need to expose the reinforcement. When you expose the reinforcement at 2 or 3 or 4 places, then you can easily get an idea whether the reinforcement is corroded or not. But in case of large areas, slabs, in case of breach decks, this method is very useful. These are you can have for depend the various grid spacings that you use. For example, if you have taken readings at a grid interval of 300 mm or say 500 mm, you can plot the readings and then highlight the areas where there is a likelihood of corrosion. These are the interpretation of results. If the measured potential difference in millivolt is more than -200, then chances of reinforcement being corroded is 5%. -200 to -35, 350, then it's 50%. 350 to 500, 95% probability that the reinforcement is corroded. And if it's less than -500, then there is a visible evidence of corrosion. Say, for example, if you get a reading of -750, obviously there is a corrosion which could be visible to you without even testing. This is a typical format that we use for reading. For example, this was conducted on a bridge pier. And you can see that the readings were taken at a given point at 16 points. Okay, carbonation. As you all must be knowing that concrete is basically alkaline in nature. That is the basic in nature. And usually an ideal concrete should have a pH value of more than 10 or more than 11. That is an ideal concrete. Now, what is carbonation? Carbonation is a process where which depends on the environmental condition also. In presence of moisture, the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere reacts with hydrated cement paste in the cover concrete, right, and produces calcium carbonate. So this process is called the carbonation or depassivation. Now what happens is, when the carbonation takes place, this is the chemical equation for the process. When the carbonation takes place, the concrete will lose its alkalinity and will try to become acidic. Now when it loses its alkalinity, it is losing its potential to protect the reinforcement from corrosion, right? So therefore this test is really important. It is usually observed that the progression of carbonation in this region where I am residing or where I am practicing, which is South Gujarat, is 1 mm per year. So if I go and test a building which is around 25 years old, the depth of carbonation which I will observe is around 25 millimeter. The point is, or the idea is, that the depth of carbonation should not exceed the cover concrete. For example, in column, if the cover concrete is 40 mm, the depth of carbonation should be less than 40 mm, because then only we can say that the cover of the concrete, to the reinforcement, has potential to reduce the, or rather not to allow the reinforcement bar corrosion, right? This is a simple procedure where a phenolphthalein solution of specific concentration is sprayed onto the specimen. For example, in the first figure, I have shown a core, and the phenolphthalein is sprayed on that, and you will find that whatever is alkaline will take a pink color, and whatever is acidic will not take pink color. So from there you can see that the top portion of the core, which is the exterior portion perhaps from a column, it shows that there is acidic, the cover concrete has become acidic to that particular depth. Now, this is very important. That is what I earlier told you, that it may be used to find out the remaining useful life of a building. I am just trying to present before you an analytical formula through which you can find out the depth of carbonation, which has also got a relation with the age of the building. Like the depth of carbonation analytically can be obtained by using this formula, where y is equal to age of the building, alpha and beta are the parameter depending on the environmental conditions and the situation of the concrete members. X is the water cement ratio and C is the depth of carbonation. These are the various values for beta. The value of alpha, as I have indicated here, is 1.7 for indoor concrete and 1 for outdoor concrete. And these are the various values for beta, which depends upon the finishing condition, like no layer, plaster, mortar plus plaster, and so on, paint, tiles, etc. Okay. The time required for carbonation of concrete cover can be estimated by using this formula. T is equal to B upon K whole square. This is important. Time required for carbonation of cover in years. T. D is the depth of cover and K is the permeability coefficient related to grade of concrete, right? So for the various grades of concrete, this permeability coefficient I have obtained from the literature available. Now, predicting useful life of concrete. As I have told you earlier that this has not been standardized, but a lot of research is taking place that depending on the depth of carbonation, you can try and find out the remaining useful life of a building. The formula as indicated here is A is equal to C upon square root of T, where C is measured depth of carbonation. For example, say it is 2 centimeter through my testing. T is the current age of the building. Say, for example, building is constructed in 2000 and tested in 2016. So it is a 16 years old building. Then A, value of A by inputting these parameters would be 0.5. Then remaining useful life can be calculated by using this formula, right? So here you find out the coefficient A, which depends upon the depth of carbonation, depends on the age of the building. And here you can find out remaining useful life using this formula, where D is the minimum concrete cover measured to any structural members. T is equal to remaining useful life of the building. Small t is current age of the building, and A is the rate of carbonation per year, which you have obtained previously, right? So for building which is considered last slide, D is equal to 1.5 centimeter. That is minimum concrete cover which we use for slabs. T is equal to 16 years as indicated earlier. A we have obtained as 0.5. So remaining useful life of the building is 33 years. This is based on the assumption that the depth of carbon, I mean, not assumption, I will say presumption that the depth of carbonation should not go beyond 2 centimeter of the specified minimum cover. There is some software also available for predicting the useful life of the remaining useful life of the building. Okay, so this is the standard format in which we provide these readings. Cover meter test, it is rebar locator. I think LET and other companies have a very simple instrument through which you can find out the location of the rebar. You just move it across and it gives you a beep sound indicating that there is a cover, and it indicates that what is the depth of cover, what is the size of the reinforcement also you can find out here. But sometimes this is highly misguiding, because if you are testing a building which is around 20 years old and the reinforcement inside has corroded, for example, if a reinforcement bar of 8 mm with corrosion will become around 10 mm or 12 mm also, and the readings that you take by using cover meter will indicate to you the diameter of bar is 12 mm, which in fact otherwise would have been 8 mm, but because the corrosion has taken place, it has become 12 mm. So this test is to be used with a lot of precaution, and the level of confidence should be very high because the diameter of the reinforcement is highly affected by corrosion. Chloride content. So these are laboratory testing for which, I mean, we structurally, as a structural engineers, we don't we need to establish a laboratory to perform this test, or the procedures which are specified in ASTM or IS code is to be followed. So what usually is done is we take a concrete core, then we crush that concrete core and then give it to laboratory and let them know about the chloride content and sulfate content in the concrete. So the total amount of chloride for RCC or plain concrete containing embedded steel should not exceed 0.6, which is maximum total acid soluble chloride expressed as kg per meter cube of concrete. The procedure may be in accordance with 6925 of 1970. This is the format of results that usually we provide. Same way, sulfate content. Clause 8.2.5.3 IS 456 says that total water soluble sulfate content of the concrete expressed as SO3 should not exceed 4% by mass of the cement in the mix. The sulfate content could be calculated as the total from the various constituents of the mix. So when you do that for concrete, then you have to you can also do that for various constituents of the mix and then add it to find out. Okay, this is the standard format that is provided for sulfate. pH value to measure the alkalinity. It is again a simple procedure that you collect a concrete dust or take a concrete core, crush it, and then measure the pH value. I think I should skip this visual inspection part, otherwise we will not be able to cover the other remaining portions, because as such it is a complete presentation for assessment of structural condition. I think I should be missing these things. Okay, core test. As I have told you earlier that this is a partially destructive test, but I feel this is the most reliable test for concrete strength evaluation. It is suggested that minimum 3 samples should be taken. I think someone has unmuted the. Okay. Minimum 3 samples are required. Minimum diameter shall be 3 times the maximum size of the aggregate, and height to depth ratio of the core should be in the range of 1 to 2. This is the fieldwork for core, extraction of core. This is such a wonderful test because it gives you an idea about the interior of concrete, core concrete also. Like for example, one core which we have extracted, you can see that we could find out a wooden plank embedded inside the concrete. Sometimes this is done deliberately also. In earlier times when no quality assurance was assured, no procedures for quality assurance was there existing. So in 20-25 years before, where there was not much awareness, you will find. Sometimes we also find bricks from the core of concrete. If a column is having a dimension of say 12 inch by 18 inch, and if you extract a core from the middle portion, instead of concrete, you may find out bricks or wooden planks, because then contractor can earn more. Okay, these are the limitations. It is very costly, can be used only at limited locations. It requires skilled operators and requires preparation of core by a skilled person. And cores can be removed from upper portion. As Mr. Abdul, you, as I had told you earlier, that cores removed from upper portion has lesser strength than the cores from the interior portions. Okay. So it is interpreted by applying various factors depending on the height to diameter ratio, and there is a formula in SP24 which also gives you the strength at several days, 7 days, 28 days, 180 days, 360 days, depending on the results that you have for 28 days strength. Okay, now I think there are many other points that are available, but looking at the time constraint, I think I would be switching to these combination procedures for in situ strength evaluation, and then we will conclude this presentation because it is already 11:20. So, see, for a large building, if I do core testing for majority of structural members, for example, 30 structural members, or say 100 structural members, then it would be very costly. It would be very time consuming. Though it is the most accurate method, it is very costly and very time consuming. So sometimes we try to resort to combination procedures for in situ strength evaluation because it optimizes the cost, it optimizes the speed, and it predicts the strength with reasonable accuracy. So these are the combination procedures available, like you do core plus UPV plus rebound hammer. You do core plus UPV, that is another approach. You do core plus rebound hammer, that is third approach, and then you do UPV plus rebound hammer, that is fourth approach, right? So, but the order of priority, like we should use 3 methods for combination: core, UPV, rebound. What is generally done is at a given location, first at a given point rather, first rebound hammer reading is taken, then UPV reading is taken, and then the core is extracted from the same point, right? I usually follow that there should be at least 30 readings available. So if I have 30 readings available from where I have performed rebound hammer, UPV, and extracted core, and I have got a result of the core test, then I will do a regression analysis, statistical regression procedure, and try to derive this equation where A multiplied by rebound hammer plus B multiplied by UPV reading plus constant C is natural logarithm of core strength, right? So based on those 3 readings, 30 sets of readings that I have, I will evaluate the value of constants A, B, and C, and then use this equation to find out the strength of concrete, in situ core strength of concrete, where only rebound hammer and UPV readings are. Now, this approach was highlighted by Bungi, and it is also available in his book on MDT of concrete, right, where he has extensively discussed about this. We have been using this procedure very extensively. This is a simple Excel sheet that we have been using for regression analysis to find out the coefficients A, B, and C for 30 sets of results. What is happening is that if, as I told you earlier, that if a building is having say 1 lakh square meter, then if you take 30 readings, 30 samples of all the 3 tests, derive A, B, and C constants, and then you take only rebound hammer and UPV readings at several other points. That is too fast. That is cost effective also. And then input those rebound hammer and UPV readings in the equations that you have formulated with known values of constant A, B, and C, right? So you input rebound hammer, UPV reading in this equation, and then you get the prediction for a core strength even without actually extracting a core, right? This method is highly reliable, but still the variation in strength results against the actual strength that you have obtained by core testing would be in the range of 15 to 25%. That you have to keep in mind while interpreting the results or while concluding about the condition of the building. These are the references which I have used for the presentation. Though I have missed several aspects of the presentation because of the time constraint, I hope I am finishing in time, and if there is time available, we can discuss and have a lot of questions. Thank you very much. Over to you, Pragna.
Yes, sir. Ravi, sir.
I request to all the participants, if you have any question, please write in chat box so we can ask to our expert.
Or they can unmute and ask.
Okay.
Whatever way it is.
Sir, this is once again Abdul sir.
Yeah.
So most of the test equipment which we are using here for NDT is going to be imported equipment, I hope.
Yes.
Therefore, when you are doing this, no, because the costly we cannot keep a standby. Now, what happens if once you are using this one for several days, if it goes wrong, if it is giving error, now we need to go for calibration.
Correct.
Therefore, do we have any companies which will do calibration in our country, or we need to send the equipments to the abroad?
No. See, for UPV, if you buy an equipment, they also give you a calibration rod.
Okay.
So you do it by yourself.
Fine, sir.
Right? If the client demands, then you can approach any NABL approved laboratory and give your calibration rod to them and get a certificate from them.
Fine, sir. What about
because that
RH,
calibration for rebound hammer also a standard testing anvil is available. So many laboratories do have that. So what you have to do is you have to apply your rebound hammer to that standard test anvil and note the results, rebound numbers. Now the manufacturer would have already supplied to you that test on testing anvil, it should get this result. If there is a variation in result, then you have to find out the correction factor on your own and then apply it to all the tests that you are doing.
So that's all. It is
So
only
for
in our
rebound
hand.
hammer and ultrasonic pulse velocity, it is not really difficult because UPV manufacturer will provide you the calibration rod. If they are not providing, you need to tell them. Any standard company, if you buy from Smith or you buy from Control, they will provide you. Testing anvil, they don't provide, but standard testing anvils are available with standard laboratories. For rebound hammer, you can go.
Fine, sir. Thank you.
Hello.
Sir, one question is there. How creep affect the maturity of concrete?
What is the question? How
creep affect the maturity of concrete?
What do we exactly mean by maturity? They can unmute. He can unmute himself and have more clarity on the
Please,
question.
Kurukrupa Rajesh ma'am, unmute yourself and ask the question to our expert.
What do you exactly mean by maturity when you try to ask this question? Creep is a subsequent phenomena which takes place as the concrete ages. So it does not affect the. It is a subsequent phenomena because of the aging of concrete. So what do we exactly mean by maturity of concrete that I want?
Hello.
I unmute. Yeah.
I unmute Kurukrupa Rajesh ma'am. Please ask ma'am question to the sir.
Please, sir, unmute your mic, Rajesh sir, and ask your question to our expert.
Thank you.
I think they perhaps may not be available there. But what I have understood from the question is creep is a subsequent phenomena for after maturity of as the concrete matures, the creep takes place. While the question is other way around, that is what I am just trying to understand what they are exactly.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, we can move ahead.
Sir, one another question is that which one of the NDT test is mostly used for testing?
See, this is what I have mentioned. All traditional methods which are used, I have tried to cover. It is rebound hammer, ultrasonic pulse velocity test, core test, then half cell potential test, cover meter test, chloride content, sulfate content, pH value. These are most widely used. Out of which rebound hammer and core test are used for interpretation of strength. UPV is used for interpretation of quality, while remaining like carbonation depth and chloride, sulfate, and pH value, they are used in relation to durability of concrete.
Okay, thank you, sir. Really, sir, it is a privilege for us. We are grateful for your time and you took to share your thoughts and experience with us. Thank you so much, sir, for this wonderful and informative session. It was a pleasure to hear you.
Yeah,
Special
thank you
thanks,
very much. And
special thanks for your time from your busy schedule.
Yeah, thank you. And I am really thankful to Mr. Abdul also, I think, who very actively participated in this. And I hope all participants should always do the same. Are you based at Goa?
No, sir, I completed my master's program in Goa. I am from Hyderabad actually.
Okay. Fine. Thank you. So nice meeting all participants. It was a pleasure to interact with you. Thank you.
Sir, really, thank you very much. Really, it is appreciable for us that you have accepted our invitation first and instantly you said yes, though you are very busy. And participants appreciated your great effort, sir. Many questions that you have given so very fluently answers and clearing by doubts, sir. So on the behalf of all the participants, I really thankful to you, sir. It was great pleasure to hear you. And we really enjoyed your interesting and informative session delivered by you. A special thanks for being here. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Pleasure here also. Thank you.
Now, yes, sir. Okay, sir. Dear participants, one announcement is that we have changed the meeting time, the timing of our valedictory session. First, we will start valedictory function at 2:30 p.m. And then after completing valedictory session, exam will be shared through Zoom, chat box, and WhatsApp. Okay, so, and please do not forget to fill feedback form on your Atal web portal. It is only available on your Atal web portal. We will not share any link for the feedback. Okay, so feedback form is compulsory to fill for the certificate, and we will only send the attendance link. So now you can take a break for only 20 minutes, and we will meet up again at 12 p.m. for our last session of the day. Thank you. Thank you all.
Ma'am, when you are going to share the attendance link?
Yes, sir.
When you are going to share the attendance link in a chat box?
Sir, at the end of or during the valedictory session, we will share it.
Oh, at the afternoon session only you are going to share it, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay, thank you.
During the session, we will share it, sir.
Okay, okay, okay.
And exam link also we will share during the session. But feedback, you have to fill feedback form. Feedback also, compulsory. You have to fill on your Atal web portal. We will not share any link for feedback form.
Ma'am, when it will be
It's
activated,
compulsory to
ma'am?
fill for the certificate.
Yeah, ma'am, excuse me, ma'am. You didn't share any link through WhatsApp or whether in a Zoom chat box?
In both, sir, we will share it.
Okay,
Ma'am,
okay.
when the feedback link will be activated, ma'am?
Sir, there is no any feedback link. I have already told you. There is no any feedback link. From our side, we will share it. You have to fill feedback form on your Atal web portal. Please open your Atal portal and fill feedback form.
Okay, okay.
Okay. So now we can leave the meeting, and we will meet up again after 15 minutes for our last session. Thank you all. Take care.